Gotta get my roster up here.
It says unable to access microphone.
You're supposed to have hit,
we don't want the microphone.
got it. Okay. So thank you for your patience as we were going over a bunch of stuff, the council meeting. Okay, can we have the roll call?
Sir, Councilmember Holland,
Here.
Segolia,
Yes.
Lewis,
Here.
Councilman Hawkins,
Here.
Mayor Whitmer.
Yep, okay.
Scolding, she told me that she would not be able to make it. We don't have committee member Patil here, committee member Hill. Here. We didn't know committee member Sleet, so we'll also go with committee member Walker.
Here.
And I'll note that there's others here.
Okay,
I thought Wally was coming.
all right, so we have one item to discuss, and that's the review and review essentially of changes to the budget that we've been looking at since March. And so I think George is going to make the presentation.
I am, but before we go to that item, there's a report out of closed session, I think.
Oh, yeah, sorry about that.
Go ahead, Mona.
Mona.
Thank you,
report up.
Mayor Whitmer. Yes, the council did meet in closed session today regarding labor negotiations and provided direction to staff. The council also met on a litigation matter and provided direction to the city attorney. And finally, the council met in closed session on the performance evaluation of the city manager and provided direction on the contract amendment, which is forthcoming at a regular meeting. There was no public comment in advance of the closed session. Thank you.
Thank you. And then thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. As the mayor indicated, tonight's study session returns the entirety of the budget back to the city council as a regular document, as a singular document that incorporates all the adjustments since the last review. So that this report this evening is just going to really talk about those particular items.
So fine.
General fund revenues are now projected at $21,466,475 against general fund expenditures projected at about $19.2 million. This reflects a single year surplus of about $2.24 million before the addition of the below the line ERAF and any transfers in or out for the CIP. The changes that we made since the last meeting results in a decrease of $373,000 from the prior study session. There's a projected year-end positive fund balance in the general fund, inclusive of all reserves, of about 11.4 million. And it also includes the unallocated balance of 3.94 million. So as of April 2023, the first major change was in VLF. As of April 2023, the countywide shortfall for VLF is about $69.98 million. And when there is a VLF shortfall, the county and the respective agencies submit their requests to the state for funding appropriations in the state budget to accommodate that shortfall. There's no statutory equivalent mechanism to Prop 1A that fully reimburses jurisdictions for the shortages. So we have met with other regional agencies, and there's been letters to the state. And as of the writing of this staff report, it was not included in the governor's May revise. But since the staff report, Senator Becker and a few others have met with governor's staff and a few other folks at the legislative, few other legislators to try and put that back into the state budget to reimburse local agencies. So it's still in limbo, but in terms of the town, it could be a $425,000 shortfall for fiscal year 22-23, and an adjustment for results in a decrease of 300,000 in revenue from the prior study session, basically. And so, does anyone need a primer on VLF and ERAF and what the state's actually doing with all of that?
That's what one-on-one meetings are all about.
Cool.
Just one quick question. And
Yeah.
so this is for this year though. So you're talking by the end of this month, we may come in $425,000.
Correct.
Okay,
And that was addressed at mid-year as well. So.
got it.
On the revenue side, revenues to the general fund decreased by 544,000 based on a more detailed review of decreases in, property tax VLF, as we just talked about, the property transfer tax and building revenue, for a total decrease of about 675,000. There were increases in the franchise fee revenue of 31,000 and the construction and demolition CTL penalty time limit of about 100,000, bringing that up to 1 million. There was an overall reduction in general fund department expenditures in the amount of 171,000. Let's see, now we're moving on to the CIP, which is the other major change. Since the last budget study session, we added the playground improvements into fiscal year 24-25. So we've got 500,000 in the budget for a design study, and then 1 million in the next year for construction. And to address these in better detail, we did produce a single page major CIP project, which you received in your pre-agenda email, and they're all printed out here this evening. That does take a more straightforward look at all the major CIP projects. And it lists them 1 through 19 on this page. And it shows in each fiscal year where that project is, whether it's in design or in the construction phase. And if the two are included, it notes it's included in the total number. So that gives you a better snapshot of where things fall within each particular fiscal year. Again, this is not going to sync up to the numbers in the budget because there's other funding contributing to some of these, as well as general fund versus CIP fund and other issues. So the other one is the drainage improvement program. And
Well,
that's-
if you could hold on for a second.
Yeah.
So the playground activity,
Mhm.
the number that's there is the extension of the playground. Is that correct? Not the fixing of what we've got already?
You mean the $1 million? The $1 million?
Yeah, the fixing is this year.
The fixing is this year.
Yeah.
And then the million and the 500,000, and then the million is,
Yeah.
let's redesign a bigger playground,
Right.
better playground, involve the
So-
public and community engagement, and then construction is.
Right.
So I have a question about that. Where did that number come from? Just
So-
out of the top of your head, or
So,
big number?
yeah, okay, so just a minor correction, the design was put in at 200,000 for this coming fiscal year. We had in our initial estimate that we brought forward to the council, we had 500,000 for the construction. The feedback from the council was to increase that from 500 to 1 million. And so that's the change, is increasing the construction budget from 500,000 to $1 million. In, I think it's 24, 25, yeah.
But would the design take $200,000 when most of this stuff is off the shelf and you just? place
It's not just the physical structure. It's also, are there other site improvements? How are we looking at designing the integrated playground? Are there civil, I mean, there's going to be survey requirements, civil drawings, in addition to just
Oh,
the
okay.
playground stuff.
As you're doing the design, there is a wall around parts of the playground today that's got kids' handprints on. I've heard from many, many parents, they do not want that interrupt or disturbed. So we're not going to, when you integrate, you're not going to change that. Don't touch it, please.
Appreciate the input. We will be sure it's going to be we anticipate an involved public process and running through the Park and Rec Committee. And I'm sure that the Park and Rec Committee has the same feedback and direction that you received.
Whether they do or don't.
Bottom line answers. no.
Yeah,
It's-
we'll make sure to keep it.
Like with, but if we don't get there, then we have to. That addresses.
Yeah.
The issue that Ann asked about the $400 and some odd $1,000. With right now, it shows that we'll be dropping below what we.
No, this is not ADAP, okay? Not ADAP meeting.
That doesn't include, funds that aren't used in this year that go back into the budget. or
Mhm.
funds that
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
use, which are always quite significant.
But if you're gonna drop $1 million on let's say somebody who builds this stuff, they'll come out and do site surveys and do a plan for you too. So just let's make sure we take advantage of all that.
We'll do.
In the drainage program, El Camino Real Long-Term Solutions, this project was advanced by one fiscal year, initiating a study and design in fiscal year 23-24 for 250,000. And that capital improvement fund increased to 2.8 in fiscal year 23-24, with project implementation to follow in 24-25 at 2.2 million instead of fiscal year 25-26. So that is again, looking at El Camino Real and trying to figure out what those drainage solutions might look like.
What says on my sheet, 2.75?
So again, that sheet you've got there is not going to tie with the budget. There's other funding and other timing mechanisms in the budget that are put in there for gap purposes. This was just a snapshot for you. So
But
it's
you
not-
made this and you're giving a presentation. So I would hope that you could,
No, it's not ever going to tie.
Well, partly in this case, because the construction fund, for example, the Los Lumitas project, and it's line 12 on that sheet, and the construction funds for the Appleton Channel reline. No, maybe not the reline, I'm not sure, but
we're getting
for
funded.
the Los Lumitas project would be coming from a federal grant.
Right. Right.
Right, right.
And the relining issue is proposed, but we haven't talked.
The relining is a separate project from the SU project. The reline is upstream from that, and the SU project is focused right at Alameda de las Pulgas and Las Lumitas.
Isn't there another issue thing?
It's the-
There's a second,
The
the channel.
No, the other one's traffic.
Alameda de los Pulgas.
That part, I thought there was some,
Yeah, there's the Alameda de las Pulgas one, which is a roadway safety.
and then the Las Ominas.
Then there's the drainage one, which is, both of those are SU projects.
Right.
The Atherton up channel relining
That's
is a
what's on
town.
my-
And is, on line one, we have the design this year of Alameda de los Pulgas safety improvements. I take it that's different from the separate line items in 13 and 14, or excuse me, in 13, which says Alameda de los Pulgas, but that's a different.
Drainage.
Well,
The one
one
below is in
is-
drainage.
Okay.
The other one's
Well, and
traffic
also-
safety.
We also have under bicycle and pedestrian, we have two, numbers 5 and 6, Alameda de las Pulgas. So those are separate from the streets and transportation?
Yeah, so that's my
Okay.
next item.
Sorry.
Go to
Yeah,
So-
number 6.
You're
should
way
be
ahead
taken
of
out.
them.
is
Way
the Stockbridge
ahead.
item that Ann was referring to is two projects, actually. One is the rapid flashing beacon that staff's recommending as part of the Stockbridge and Alameda de las Pulgas pedestrian safety improvements. That's the $100,000. And then there is, from the last council meeting, the council said, hey, maybe that's not enough. Let's look at doing a signal or a hawk beacon, and that's the second and larger project.
I'm gonna recommend to the council that we consider taking out the second one and hold that off until after we install the rapid flashing beacon, which is what staff told us was probably enough. And evaluate it. Yeah, and if we, if it turns out that we don't think it's enough, we have accidents there still, we can always come back, but having two things, putting in the rapid flashing beacon and then at the same time putting money into put a hawk beacon there, which is kind of overkill. So I recommend that we eliminate number 6.
It's a good recommendation, Mayor.
I agree with that too, and I live there.
Okay, can do.
Wait, can we discuss that?
Yeah, that's why I brought it up.
So the rapid flashing beacon, which is $100,000 cost, how does that work? That is a pedestrian initiated?
It is a pedestrian actuated flashing beacon, similar to what we have at either Glenwood or on
Valparaiso.
Valparaiso. There's a couple of those. And so what it would be is at the crossing, they hit the button, the strobes would go to advise motoring traffic that the car is coming. In addition to those, what we're proposing are a couple of advanced LED signs that will also kind of flash so that approaching traffic, because it's on a hill.
That was down.
No, what I'm getting at is, so you have the push button with the blinkers. In addition to that, which is at the crosswalk,
You have
the
it for back.
proposal is about 100 feet away from the intersection at both sides
Yeah.
because of the hill and stuff. Having another sign tied in that it won't strobe as much, but it'll also have some blinking lights to advise. It would be initiated and tied in with that strobe to advise motoring traffic as they're approaching that somebody is intending to use the crosswalk.
Palo Alto has those in a couple of places.
Obviously, we would be putting in a crosswalk. I don't think the crosswalk-
No, there is no crosswalk. The county has already put in the curb ramps on their side of the intersection. So improvements will be required both in the town as well as in the county. I think we shared and actually in your in the draft book, actually, there's a picture of those improvements that the county initially laid out when we were applying for the grant to do the work. So I
it's a
think
good
it's.
beginning. And I think it'll make our budget balance a little bit better,
Yeah,
not have them both in.
I live there and I take that turn
Sounds
at least
good.
4 times a day. And I think that that's definitely, you don't need more than that, in my opinion.
Wait, you think what?
We don't need more than that in that intersection.
More than the flashing beacon
Yes.
that's pedestrian
4
initiated?
times a day, that's the school. And I go where the schools are. And I go there during school time, which is when it's the most crowded. So I think it's fine. I'd be surprised if it wasn't good enough. I think it is.
So we're going to remove the second line item.
Right.
And that will help balance our low budget,
Big numbers up.
make our low numbers look better.
A quick question, that is, so is it true that that 100,000, does that include both design and construction? Or, because there's nothing after it in line 5?
In line 5, like I said, we were working with the county when we did the grant application. They basically did about a 50% design when we were doing the grant application.
Mm-hmm.
So the extra cost, we're going to try and partner again with the county, have them complete that design and work with them on trying to get the improvements done.
But my question was, is in construction included in that?
The construction is included in that 100,000.
It is.
The
Yeah.
cells are merged if you look, there's no line between it. It's tricky.
Aha.
It's a little
Oh,
tricky.
that, I guess, say my eyes are not that
I
good.
know.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions on the major CIP changes?
Wait, on any of the CIP changes?
Yeah, those are the changes.
Well, I have a couple questions.
Okay.
On line item 2, this is the, it's called pedestrian improvements from, the rail to
Middlefield?
Middlefield Road. And is that the fence? What is that exactly?
So in this year's budget, we had some money to look at the walkway along Middlefield between basically the tracks and, I'm sorry, on Watkins between the tracks and Middlefield Road. So we hired a designer to give us some concepts. Those concepts were brought forward to the Bike and Ped Committee. We're planning to bring back the recommendations to the next council meeting for council feedback, and then we'd move forward with design on that, depending on if we are going the direction of where the Bike and Ped Committee were. It may be something that fits within the budget that we have. And then in addition to that, we have money allocated for the fencing improvements.
So the
17.
The fencing is item number 17. This is separate from that. This is we've had a fair amount of discussion of the curb and the walkway, and this deals with the
That's
walkway.
correct.
And we've had discussion about it because the walkway is extremely rough and somebody could easily trip and it's just not. But we've also had a lot of discussion about the curb being dangerous for somebody who's riding a bike because they
Because it's
basically, if they
wide
hit it,
off.
they're in trouble.
Yeah, so that'll be brought forward at the the June regular meeting for the council to have a full discussion about
Okay.
that project.
So we don't need to discuss that now.
No, and then number 7 is the other side of Watkins. It's the railroad corridor to El Camino.
Yeah, so what are you gonna do? What are you designing?
Well, I think
it
it's
gonna be
more an
part-
evaluation of what's possible.
Yeah.
They're just-
Everybody parks in their little easement there. There's just no room for.
And-
No,
on the other
and
side,
that's basically, we're gonna have to look and
top
see
of the
what's
sheet.
feasible to do. It's
Well,
more a
it's going
feasibility
south of
analysis and
far.
kind of
I agree.
recommendations that that would be brought forward, and based on how that turns out and what the council desires is when we'd actually develop more of a project.
Well, there's two things related to this. One, it first came up when Caltrain proposed to close the station. And in the course of us negotiating with Caltrain, we wanted easier access for someone from Atherton to walk to the Menlo Park station. And there were really two options for that. One was to use the SFPUC water right of way that goes along the train fence on the El Camino side of the train fence, but right along the wire fence, and go up Sequoia Avenue to the sidewalk at El Camino. Sequoia is the next street down after Watkins. And that we didn't get anywhere with Caltrain to pay for that, so it didn't go anywhere. But the other option was to look at putting a sidewalk in on one side of Watkins up to El Camino Real. That's one data point. The second data point is, I think many of us have seen people walking on Watkins because you can't walk anywhere but on the road, including people with babies and strollers walking on it, and it's dangerous. And we've gotten a fair amount of comments about it being dangerous. So the question on what to do, I mean, you'd be taking part of the right of way that, yes, people park in, and they'd have to figure out where they're going to park if we put a sidewalk in there.
But Councilmember DeGoya, that's true in so many other streets and lanes and avenues all around town.
That's right.
There's
And
just.
we're changing it this year on Selby Lane because we're going to put in a bike lane.
Exactly. Well, primarily because that is a ped and bike path to the school.
Correct.
And it's.
And
but
this is a
if you-
this is a
if you-
ped and bike path to the park.
So if you
It
go
just so
down
happens the ped and
Emily
bike path
and
is on the
Park
street.
Lane around Sacred Heart, there's no walkway, there's no ped or bike path.
So when I was,
There doesn't need to be. It's not the same. It's not as dangerous.
Well, I'm just
I
making a
think,
point.
one of the things I think is more important, because a large number of people, not only in this area here, but also in Lloyden Park, that walk to the park.
Yeah.
There's not an easy way to cross over Watkins to get over there. So you're standing at the edge. I brought this up when we were talking about projects, okay? You're standing there, and if you're a little kid, you got a hill to look over to see if a car's coming towards the west on Watkins. That's more important than this, what you're talking about. I agree with you, Rick, and Elizabeth both. There are a lot of places here where there's just no place to walk except for in the street. Dinklesfield is the same thing. People are in the middle of the road all the time. But that is something that really needs to be looked at, because there needs to be something. Now, maybe it's one of those flashing beacons with it on the other side of the railroad tracks and then on this side of the railroad tracks. Because when the cars are coming, there's a hump there at the railroad tracks. And somebody small really can't see very well, or on their bike really can't see very well. And I think that that's a higher priority, as I said a couple of weeks ago, or a couple of months ago. I really would rather allocate the money for that. And I think it would be less expensive to get that in, and then we can look at putting sidewalks elsewhere and things like that.
Well, again, this is, as Robert mentioned, this is just a feasibility analysis. So maybe we could expand that to look at your thing too. There may be some, Caltrain issues, CPUC issues with respect to stopping people at a crossing for a pedestrian, because they might stop on the tracks. So there's concerns there.
Oh, we
that
have
to be
5
addressed.
gates there,
So
so.
why don't we include it as part of this evaluation?
Yeah,
Same.
yeah,
I think
exactly.
that's a
All
good
right,
suggestion.
okay. I put it at a higher priority.
yeah, when I was running for office, I went and knocked on all those doors on that street and I had 3 separate houses tell me
Mhm.
that they drive their car to the park because they don't feel like walking, which is 1 block, which is nuts. So I think it's that neighborhood they seemed very eager in seeing some kind of pedestrian bike safety and maybe a traffic mitigation strat to slow down the cars on that. Cause that street also has a lot of families and kids.
And one of the problems that they have when they're coming up that street is looking over the hill to see
Yeah.
if a car's coming.
The hill's a problem. I totally agree, but I think if we do it as part of the study, we can assess it, and there's going to be a change there because the quad gates are being put in
Right.
this year.
Okay.
Well, the study, at what point would we be talking to the neighbors about? 'Cause it is like, I mean, there's also no parking on that street, so I'm super curious to see what they ultimately want in the study. Like when, is that part of the study or is that when it comes in front of the council and the public?
Oh, that's the planning commission.
No, Planning Commission wouldn't see it, but
It would be.
Just, yeah. And us, it's not. Public.
go ahead.
the-
You're good.
The ideal would be through the Bike and Ped Committee and likely transportation,
And neighbors would be notified.
and neighbors would be notified and invited.
Yeah, I'm curious. I mean, they both really need it and also I'm sure will be protective of their parking. So I'm just really curious to see what they want.
Right.
I'm glad we're doing it.
Okay, any other questions on that spreadsheet?
Yeah, I've got a couple. What is the ECR gap closure?
That's the ongoing study and that we initiated with the Transportation Authority for El Camino Real, the Bike and Ped.
Grand Boulevard.
And so what we have going on now, getting started now, is a planning level study. And the next phase on that is to initiate the preliminary engineering and environmental. And so it's just a placeholder funds for the next stages in that project.
What is PAED?
So it's a project analysis and environmental documentation.
So I don't understand. So 150,250 would be to
The,
assess what this organization that's doing a study right now would recommend?
no, we have a grant to do a planning level analysis on El Camino Real.
And isn't that being done now?
That's being started now. That does not include doing any environmental work. It doesn't involve the initial levels of design. And so what we envision is, as the project moves forward, we're going to apply for more grants to help us get the next stages done, because the town can't afford it on its own. And so we are looking to set aside basically matching money for those next phases of the project.
Okay, but but there's a policy issue, which is what if we don't agree with what's being recommended?
So we've already, I mean, the council's already addressed the policy issue of the first phase. And so once
Of
that's,
the first phase, you mean letting them do the study on,
we're a partner. It's a collaborative grant that we applied for. Council approved that part already. And so once that completes, then Robert's saying there's a phase 2 where it might be implemented. And that's, again, a policy choice for the council to continue or not.
okay, but for the count, but I don't under, if the recommendation is to reduce the width of the street to 2 lanes in each direction, we haven't made that decision.
No, and that, like I said, we have the planning level study that's getting started, and it'll have recommendations, concepts, layouts that will be brought forward through a public process and through the council for feedback, direction, et cetera, before that is done. Looking forward.
That's also before this money is spent, I assume.
That's correct.
And so the 250 is if the council wants to move forward with the next phase, policy call, we need matching money set aside. That's all that is a placeholder for that.
Okay. I mean, that could probably be said about a lot of things if we wanted to move forward with something that might happen in the future.
That's pretty much everything past 23, 24.
Okay. Okay.
Any others on that page?
Still working on this, off of this page.
That's it. That's the page.
This is the page. Is there another page?
Nope, I
Except
guess
for
it's
the-
a motion to adjourn.
I just have a couple of more sentences.
Okay, I'm gonna say them quickly.
All right,
Are you
so,
gonna ask some questions or not?
Not on this, it's on a different.
okay, so for fiscal year 23, 24, revenues again, were projected at 21.5 million against expenditures of 19.2, resulting in the single year positive end balance of 2.2 million, total ending fund balance of 11.4. That is inclusive of reserves. So for fiscal year 23, 24, the below the line ERAF is set at 2.3 million. And the debt service payment is also included at 867,000. Transfer out to the CIP, which funds all of these particular projects on this page, is 5.99 million. So the beginning 2023 balance was 13.5, and the ending fund balance is 11.4. The town would meet its reserve requirements of 5.7, which are 15 and 15, 15 for emergency reserve and 15 for budget stabilization, leaving a total reserve requirement of 5.7. You take out ARPA, which is still set aside, and when you adopt the budget, you'll get that resolution from Robert that says, hey, this is where we're going to allocate all of the ARPA money.
And
then
you're
that
gonna put the
1.7
$100,000
will just roll
in.
back into your unallocated balance. So less all of that, you have 3.9 million in unallocated reserves. Plus, once we roll the ARPA back in there, that 1.7. So happy to answer any other questions. Ann?
So I'm in the actual. Sorry, I better turn myself on. I'm in the actual supporting documents that follow it now.
What page are you? referring to?
Let me just
What
make sure.
Page.
So the first page I have a question on is page 11 of 86. It's a breakdown of general fund. And
Little pie chart.
no, I'm not in the,
This one here.
one of 86 on in the packet.
It's on the.
I mean, 11 of 86, pardon me. But it's the general fund chart. Anyway, the question is, for encroachment, which is about 6 or 7 lines down, there's a huge jump from 485,000 estimated this year to a budget of 600,000 for next year, and I'm just wondering why that's such a big leap.
There's no indication.
I'm not sure I entirely understand what it all encompasses, encroachment. Because this is on the revenue side. This is the money you're expecting people to pay when they have to encroach the right of way to take down a dead tree or something. And what does it mean?
Take down a dead tree, redo their
Um,
driveway, dig a sewer line.
And utility work.
Utility.
Utility work. So the number proposed for next year is just a hair under what the adjusted budget was for this fiscal year. I think the adjusted budget, I'm gonna have, so Robert would be the ideal person to answer the question. However, looking at these, historically, the actual in 21-22 was 590,000. The adopted budget for this current fiscal year was at 623.
It's only coming in at 45, and that's what I'm looking
Well,
at.
it may have been Robert may have calculated in, it's going to come in after the fiscal year ends or however that might.
So
occur,
it
but
could be a
Or it
timing issue.
Could be a timing issue.
Or it doesn't get, that just doesn't get used, which.
It's a revenue.
It was just one of the
Oh, it's
biggest,
revenue.
leaps in these line items. That's why I asked the question.
Sleep was the
One of the biggest leaps.
one going to $1 million.
Yeah, the one at planning department, I get that one. I understand what's in there and it's just really scary that it's that much for housing development and whatever the other part of it
I
was.
think the
Contract
forfeiture
planner
number
or
is the one
something
that
like that.
jumps up quite a bit.
Then I go to page 20 of 86, which is the detailed provide the finance budget. And And the bottom line, the reason I started looking at it is because the bottom line is showing a decrease for next year's budget as compared to what it is now. And so I thought, well, hold it, we're not losing people, are we? And then I looked more closely and it appears some of that is because we're paying less for retiree health insurance out of that department budget, which I get. But also there was a big decrease in workers' compensation, and this happens in one of the other departments too. And I'm wondering, boy, everybody I know says it's going to cost more for workers' comp. So what's going on?
We have an internal service fund that tracks, vacation that we have to set aside, sick leave we got to set aside, workers' comp we have to set aside. And we've been setting aside money into that fund year after year to maintain our required retention. When that's of a sufficient amount, we can look back at our budgets and say, okay, we don't need to tax, for example, our police budget or admin budget or whatever it is, the same percentage, because they're paying into that internal service fund enough. And the fund has enough in it, to pay what's required.
So it's kind of self-insuring in a way?
Yes.
Okay, so all
We've
right.
reduced the percentages across the line.
So then that would also explain a similar issue with the police budget.
Yes. And they have a
This is where
bigger
I
hit.
picked Up on the same exact.
Same
issue.
exact.
I mean, it
thing,
went
yeah.
from 470,000 down to 45,000.
Yeah, and I mean, 220,000 decrease is
Yeah.
due to workers' comp.
The
there.
percentage
Okay,
went
thank
down.
you. I think I understand that. And then Department of Public Works, this is page 32 of 86. A breakout for DPW 50 to 59, whatever that means. I don't know what that means, but and the increases, the biggest increases I noted were that salaries are going up by 160,000. Is that, do we need more workers because of the town center? I mean, the town hasn't gotten any bigger, so,
We're actually be fully staffed.
oh,
So we've been running without
Engineer.
an engineer for, so that's why.
well,
Year
that
plus
Jack
or
just
so.
added pay for an engineer. Okay, that makes sense. And then the equipment repair and maintenance, is this the totaled Explorer? It's
No,
97?
that's within the PD.
Oh, it is. Oh, okay.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to find where you are,
I'm
but
sorry, it's
on
in the
page
packet, the
33.
PDF packet is 32 out of
33.
86.
Which is
DPW
not in our
50 to
binder.
59.
If you look at the whole pack though, it's page
Okay.
33 out of 86.
I'm paying.
In front page.
so in terms of equipment repair and maintenance, we have a variety of things, but what I would say is that the biggest issues are really related to the town center and all of the maintenance contracts that we need to have to maintain this place, ranging from our HVAC systems to our what do you call it? Building management system. So there's a bunch of different contracts that we have
Okay,
for building maintenance.
so the bottom line is that these two things represent a quantum leap, and we're going to stay up there. It's not an anomaly this year. It's jumping up to a new level.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I was trying to figure out. I think I only have one more. I only have one more little tag here. Oh, well, this is just, I don't know who is sort of in charge of the CIP, the pretty colorful thing.
I'm happy to take new
I just-
pictures.
Yeah, I just have a couple,
Updated, yeah.
of minor typos that I could ask you
Okay.
about.
Yeah,
It's not,
please,
I don't need to take people's time there.
please.
Okay, anything else?
Not for me.
Anybody on the public that's on the
Bob's,
call?
Bob's on. Bob Polito is on.
No, Bob, do you have a question or a comment?
He dropped off.
No, I have nothing. I am paying attention.
That's good, that's good. What country are you in today?
No, I'm home with a bad back.
Oh,
Ooh.
sorry to hear. Okay. Rick, you have any other?
I'm trying to understand. So I'm looking at in the CIP,
Mhm.
the Civic Center Master Plan Implementation Program.
That one is, I believe, solely the train station.
That's solely the train station.
No, the
Okay,
train
and
station
it
is this fiscal
shows
year.
costs of 150,000 in 23, 24, and 100,000 in each of the next 2 years.
Yeah, what's the next 2 years, Robert?
So that is actually what we anticipate is that there are going to be miscellaneous items that are going to be desired and wanted around here. So some of that money is likely going to go for the lighting of the trees this coming year, putting in something for that. And we just basically are having a placeholder because we foresee that there are going to be little things here and there that are going to be desired here at the town center.
Is that also a potential placeholder for the generator extension for the library and city?
Depending on where that cost comes, yeah.
So is the projection for 23-24 the train station?
No,
Museum?
23-24. We had the budget for the train station. The 300,000 that we had initially for the construction was in this current fiscal year. The contract has been awarded. And so the money is already allocated in this current fiscal year for the train station.
All right, so the narrative and the photos are a little bit misleading, I think.
Yeah, the photos, definitely.
Yeah.
The write-up needs to be changed. You know,
Okay.
we need to just clean all that up.
Yeah,
All right,
okay.
As we do.
we'll do.
Because it fooled me too.
Sorry.
Okay, so just to be clear, then what in the CIP for 23-24, the 150,000 is for miscellaneous.
Very good.
I think that's fair. I have another question. I think I asked George this, but now I don't remember exactly the answer. Under the neighborhood traffic management program on page 19 of the CIP, we're showing $40,000 in 23-24. And then $10,000 a year, which is really just sort of maintenance. We put in temporary traffic control devices right on, I think, 3 streets, maybe. We put them on
couple, yeah.
Glenwood and Linda Vista
Yeah.
and Fair.
Actually, the ones on
Fairview.
Linda Vista and Fairview haven't gone in yet. I need to get them done.
Oh, they haven't gotten it done.
Yeah, so we actually have money in this current year budget that we're carrying over as well to complete some of that stuff.
And is there any money, but the money, and maybe that's what the 40,000 is the carryover, I'm not sure, but there's a certain amount that we've budgeted to do the work we said we
Yeah.
want to do on the neighborhood program, but the concept was that once those temporary traffic control devices were assessed,
Mhm.
we would either remove them or make them permanent. I'm pretty sure, right?
Yeah, so we need to send out a request letter over to, for example, the residents on Glenwood to get that final feedback and bring that back to what would be the transportation committee before making that final.
So we don't,
Decision.
we don't have any kind of technological way of keeping track of the speeds on those. I mean,
We,
yeah, sure, you can ask the people who live on the street, but it'd be better if you do.
yeah, we have a couple of ways. They're not perfect. We have radar speed feedback signs that we could tap into. The PD has black boxes that can be put up. The other, we have access to one of those big data sites to give us some feedback as well. But I think it's more going to be on from the resident perspective, more related to noise and other things that you say with each of these devices, there's some positive aspects and some potential negative attributes. And so it's really that balance on trade-off with regards to the residents that are directly affected.
Got it, thanks.
What about residents in general that use the street? It seems like everyone would like to have traffic control right outside their house, but
Actually, they want them further down
Yeah,
the
they don't.
street.
Yeah, but
So it's really that one directly in front of their house that,
But the neighborhood traffic management program is designed in a way so residents on a particular street can petition the town for a traffic control device on their street. Then what happens at that point is the PD and Public Works get involved. They go out there, they examine the street, they see if there's any enforcement that can be done or other non-traffic control related devices that can be put in. And then if that's still not successful, Then we go to the speed humps and the other solutions like that.
But the reason I brought it up, I mean, this is good, all this is good, and this is how we make the assessment. But was if we decide to make it permanent, there's going to be a cost.
Yeah, we have the
And
money
that,
for it.
I don't think that cost is included
Yeah.
in our CIP.
Like I say, we have carryover funds in the current year budget that should be sufficient.
That would cover making it permanent?
Yeah, if that's what the residents want.
Yeah, they're
Okay.
just asphalt speed humps, so they're not. too
Yeah.
expensive.
Okay. Okay, that kind of answers that. I didn't know we had enough to do that.
So how, what approach if a citizen comes up and says, you know, gosh, we got to do something about the speed of the traffic on James, for example, because I live in Lindenwood and it's pulled straight away for way too long with no stop signs, no nothing, and people drive way too fast.
So we, as George said, we have a process for that. I'm happy and the chief or PD are happy to sit down and talk with any resident about their
That'd be great.
concerns.
Because people just use it as for thoroughfare to get as fast as they
And,
can.
and that's why we put in place the management traffic program. So that it would give residents a mechanism to do something.
Okay,
That doesn't mean that it gets used very often,
Right.
but there is a mechanism. Which these
They just need to call
Glenwood
the
and
town
Fairview and I think
complain.
Linda Vista chose to, pursue it and they're getting the temporary speed humps. And I think Fair Oaks Lane, we did get a fair amount of feedback from people that wanted it.
Yeah,
but-
so that was one of the next,
Oh, that's coming?
I need to double check. The council adopted the program with prioritization, and so we need to work our way through
For
that.
where the temporary speed humps are gonna go.
That's correct.
To convene a traffic transportation committee meeting, Mayor.
Maybe we should.
We need residents on it in order to have a quorum.
All right, well, is there any other questions about the budget or the items that are actually on the agenda here? If not, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye, okay, bingo.